Alright, this is R. Wexler, or my YouTube channel name is R&M Reviews, and I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial of the UFSv2. And the UFSv2 is an atomizer tank system made by Imeo, who makes the Golden Greek line of e-cigs. And right here I have my GG-TS, or GG Telescopic Storm. It's running a 3.7 volt battery with a HH357 in it right now, but that's not the point of the video, just to give you a little example of some of the work that he makes. But I'm a total GG and Imeo fanboy. I have more GGs than I can afford currently and more accessories than I really need. But this is one of them. This is his, I guess, flagship piece of his line, the GGTS, with a full connector and airflow ring. And that's that, but onto the UFS. So I've been reading a lot of posts on the forum lately about people having trouble with their UFSs and a lot of issues with leaking upon refilling it. So I figured I would make an instructional video. And I guess the most important thing for the UFS is right here, and it's the Vaseline. People talk it up, it really is just as important as all the hype says it is. But for the purpose of saving time during this video, I have already Vaselined almost every part of my UFS, so let's go from there. So the first part, and the only part that I'll be assembling O-rings for, is the connector pin. And so you have the pin itself, little metal nut for it, two tiny black O-rings, and one plastic connector. So first part of the assembly, you take your connector pin and the metal nut. Slide the metal nut onto the connector pin like such. Then two black O-rings go on to the connector post. O-rings on. Like every other O-ring and thread on my UFS, these have been adequately lubed up with the Vaseline. The next step, take your black connector and put it over the O-rings and just do it finger tight. So then you have your assembled connector pin. Next, this is the base of the UFS. Notice every O-ring in there, there are 3 on this one, has been properly Vaselined. The most important 2 on here to Vaseline are these 2 top ones, because they are what keep your connector tank, where the atomizer connection is right here, and the bottom base of the juice tank, they keep it sealed so no juice leaks into the base. Okay, the pin goes into the small hole here. And again, just finger tight, no need for needle nose pliers or anything to get this any tighter. Let's see. Okay, that's nice and snug in there. Okay, next component is the collector tank. Collector tank goes on. And what's also here, before I put this on, I'll show you. Really important threads to lube that people often forget about are the threads inside the tank itself. Let's see if I can get my camera to autofocus. There we go. Those threads really need to be Vaselined, so it makes screwing the juice control, opening and closing it, much easier. So this goes on. Again, nice and snug, O-ring is not visible. And we're on to the air control ring. Now this is what covers these 4. Let's see. It's going to want autofocus. There we go. See these 4 holes here? Your ring goes onto them. So as you tighten or loosen the ring, it will stiffen or loosen your draw. But for refilling, you want your air control to be totally closed. Nice and secure. No hole showing and no gap between the ring and the collector tank visible. Okay, next component, and arguably the most important component of the piece, is the juice control ring. Now for the juice control ring, I actually add an additional O-ring that Imeo does not include. I'm not positive on the side of this O-ring, but it's one more layer of protection to prevent leaking. So you can see there is a big dab of Vaseline hanging off of there. Really sorry for the autofocus, guys. I bought this Logitech webcam that claimed max support and the adjustable autofocus just doesn't work. But here's this O-ring, and on the inside of the connector tank, the inside of those threads, you're going to sit that O-ring all the way down. I also put Vaseline on the inside of the ring for another layer of protection from leaks and just to keep everything snug and moving smoothly. So next step, you're going to want to put your juice control ring onto the base of the UFS. And for now, we can tighten that all the way down. So onto the kind of tricky part, more the crucially important part. So right here I have a HH357. This is standard resistance atomizer, standard size. It's not the long barrel. What we're going to do is screw that into the 510 connector on the UFS. So if you can see, there's a slight ring that goes under the 510 connection to expose the two holes in the bottom of the threads of the 510 connector, and those allow juice to flow up into the atomizer. And that's really the beauty of the UFS system, is that it gives you the same constant vaping of a dual coil cartomizer tank like the DCT map tank or the M4A1 tank or what have you, but you can use your 510 atomizers. So next, once this is screwed in tight, and I mean really tight, you don't want your atomizer coming undone accidentally, you screw your juice control ring all the way to the left. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but it is not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, it is the opposite. Turning your juice control to the left begins to close the juice control, whereas to the right opens it, because the idea is that as it threads up, it's closing the gap between the 510 and the base of the juice control ring, meaning that it's cutting off the amount of juice that will go into your atomizer. So once that's all the way up and tight, you're ready for the actual body of the UFS. Now, there are a few main parts of the body, or of the tank itself, and the first one is the clear tank part. Now, the clear goes onto here, and also if you're into cinnamon or heavier citrus juices, there is a stainless steel small ring here, but I'm using the clear one because I like to be able to tell how much juice I have left. So as you can see, also properly Vaselined, and no O-ring is showing, so it's nice and tight on there. And that's that. And then the next step can go in one of two directions. Now, in my UFS, I have it's actually the UFSv2 510 extender. Let's see if it'll... There we go. So you can see it's not big enough on the inside to accommodate a normal 510 drip tip. It's kind of coned on the inside. But cladsofvapor.com actually does have the new 510 extenders in stock. So if you have a 510 extender or using a dual coil cartomizer, which you actually can use in here, or a long barrel HH357, or a dual coil atomizer from Clouds of Vapor, or even the Odysseus in UFS mode, then you don't need this guy and you can skip this step. But if you do have the 510 or are using one of those aforementioned atomizers or cartomizers, you can use the extender ring for what's known as full mode UFS versus just going straight to putting your fill cab on. But let's go to full mode now. Also, when you're tightening these, make sure you're not letting your juice control ring open up at all. So you want to make sure that when it's turned all the way to the left, don't know if you're going to be able to tell, but you can just see the edge of the little black O-ring just above the airflow ring and just above the threads. So that's the sign that the juice control is totally closed. Okay, so next, probably should have put this on before, but we're going to put our 510 extender onto my 510 atomizer. And if you're not using this 510 extender or using the regular one, you can use a normal 510 drip tip or 901 drip tip. In my case, I'm using the black Delrin UFS drip tip or mouthpiece. And for mine, I've actually using a heated up ice pick. I bored out the hole in the mouthpiece because I found the draw was a little bit too tight. Let's see if I can vanquish this autofocus. Okay, there we go. So you can see I bored it out a little, so it's much bigger. That's that. Now, we are ready to fill this. So I'm using pretty heavy VG juice, some DIY juice that I make. It's a fruit flavor. And just fill this up. Now when you fill it, again, make sure juice control totally closed, air control totally closed, because it creates a vacuum seal within the tank when you finally close it all up. So you want to make sure no air escapes, which would ultimately force juice up through the atomizer and result in leaks. So we're going to fill her up. Do this kind of slowly. You don't need to be super careful when filling it, but okay, and now I fill about half an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch below the threads. Actually have the perfect amount of juice right there. So now we have our totally filled UFS. I'm going to put this off to the side for a sec while I show you the next step. Okay, now the next step, and probably the one that leads to the most leaks for people, is the mouthpiece ring, or I think the fill ring, they call it on Clouds of Vapor. So this consists of this ring and either your UFS mouthpiece, or they sell or I believe it comes with the standard kit, which is discontinued unfortunately, but it's it looks like a little threaded washer that goes in here to compress the O-ring and allows you to use a normal 510 drip tip. But what you need to do, this O-ring needs to be Vaselined. I mean a good fucking amount of Vaseline. So usually I have a little bit in here. I don't have any right now, so take my Vaseline, take my O-ring, drop said O-ring into the Vaseline. Be generous, then I take my Q-tip, put it in, give it a nice little dip in there, then use the Q-tip to clean it up a little. Smush it around, get it nice and greased. Okay, so that has a good coat of Vaseline on there. And you're gonna wanna put that off to the side. So I'll just drop that right here. Wipe my hands off a bit. And for fiend's sake, I'll take a little toot of my GGTS. Okay, so on to the finishing steps. So right now we're going to put this ring on, and normally there is an O-ring just below the threads of this top tank for the extension, and I actually prefer it without the O-ring on there. I don't have any issues with leaking, because if that O-ring is there, then this cap doesn't fit snugly enough to conceal the O-ring, which kind of bothers me a little. I like everything to look nice and flush. So we're going to screw that on. Again, just finger tight. No need to really kill it on there. Then, O-ring, important step. You can see there is a tiny gap between our 510 extender and where the O-ring goes. We're just going to drop that in. Okay, it's just pushed in there. We're going to take our UFS mouthpiece, screw it in first, nice and tight, so you know your O-ring is pushed all the way in. Then what I do is I take it off and I just screw it on till it's just barely taut. Then you have a UFS that is ready to vape. So, as far as connecting it, okay. Here is our GGTS. Right now I have a 3.7 volt battery, 18650, but because this is standard resistance Addy, I'm using a 4.8 volt Clouds of Vapor mod battery in here. In UFS, and it has the same threads as the normal collector tank, the stealth cap, what have you, the Odysseus GGTS cap. Oh, never mind, that's for the control ring itself, but then we're on. And first thing I like to do is I open my air control and I tighten down just a fraction of the full threads on the juice control. Now, there's definitely a learning curve with using the UFS, and the idea is to balance air control to juice control so that, let's move this forward to fix that light balance there. You want to get it so you can keep your air control tight enough to be able to pull juice up into the atomizer, and then the juice control open enough to allow juice to flow freely up into the Addy, but not too open to flood your atomizer. And that's the true way to use it, but then a way that I enjoy if I'm using it at school and I need to keep it like 100% juice free all the time, then I will keep my juice control totally sealed. And then when it needs a drip, or UFS equivalent, I will open my juice control almost all the way, take one good hard toot without the button depressed, and then close it back up. So I usually have it pretty well set up for myself. And take a couple rips for you. Yeah. So it's hitting fine. I wish I hadn't used a standard resistance Addy in here, but that's what I have in here right now, because I have a UFS to 510 adapter that I bought from this Polish fellow named donjohn on e-cigarette forums, and just send him a private message on there and he will set you up. But you can see it's just the threads from, like, same as the top cap or the telescope, same diameter, but it has a 510 connection. Oh, this autofocus is killing me. Let's see. There we go. And you can see right now the little telescoping 510 connector is pushed all the way out. So that's how it was set up in my Provari, but that presses in a little. And then what you do is UFS just screws into the base of the UFS. Now, gets a little stuck sometimes. When I first bought mine, I actually had to use sandpaper to fully screw it all the way down, but instead these two little holes here, I can use my needle nose tweezers, or I have needle nose pliers upstairs, and they go in so I can get a nice tight fit into my UFS. Let's see, just so it's level with the base. Okay, and then onto my black Provari. Nice and tight. And it's working, so let's see. Power up, 5.3 volts. I'll give it a couple of toots. So that's the UFS. I mean, it's probably my favorite e-cig accessory I own at this point. I guess with the exception of the Odysseus, which isn't an accessory, it's kind of a monster in its own regard, but that's the UFS. No. Once you get the learning curve down on the juice control and air control, it really works beautifully. And if you're into dripping but are kind of fed up with the hassle of it, and you're not really willing to deal with the added girth that a vape mate will add on to your mod, then UFS is a really great accessory for your GGTS if you can get one on the classifieds, or if you already own one. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Later.